What's going on, everyone? Welcome to a Football Friday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here as we got a ton of football. I feel as though Black Friday is among us, even though it's the holiday season. Not so much for some coaches, unfortunately, looking potentially for jobs. Our good friend, the former All-Pro and, of course, Pro Bowler James Hasty with the New York Jets and, of course, Kansas City Chiefs and part of CPAS. Unbelievable analytical data. He gets you ready. If you need a coaching staff, this is the man to speak to. And by the way, he called it Nostra Hasty is what I might call you. Because, well, we saw a couple things foreshadowing of things to come with some of these coaches. Nonsense in Washington, Carolina, and then after a 63-point beatdown, it had to be done with the Chargers. Not only is Staley out, James, but also the GM. I mean, so it's like 1-2, clean house. Shocked by that move at all, or do you believe it was long overdue?
Well, I'm never happy to see anyone get fired in the National Football League. But when you have the ending of the 2022 season where they lost the game against Jacksonville, then you come out and then you lose against a Raider team that doesn't have has an interim general manager, has an interim head coach, and you get 63 put up on you. It's tough. It's tough to deal with, overcome something like that. Essentially,
Have you ever been a part of a game like that where I am very careful to say players quit, because at the end of the day, they're getting a paycheck. They have a livelihood. It's their careers on the line, their bodies on the line. And more importantly, they're on film. But I just saw a team that really wanted no parts of stepping out on the field. I can only say it watching on TV, but for someone that played as long as you did at a high level, have you ever experienced that type of stretch or a game like that?
I haven't, that I can recall, until today. And then I pulled up and I saw this little bit of history, and then it said this history hadn't been repeated before since 1989, which was my second year in the league. So the team and I'm not trying to jump off the subject here, but the Jets are going to have four quarterbacks this year, four different quarterbacks. The last time that was done was 1989 with the Jets, and we had four different quarterbacks. So, and we went 4-12 that year. So, to your question, there were probably some losses in there that I wasn't real proud about as a second year player, especially being as though we had four different quarterbacks, and we went 4-12. So,
wow,
in this league, anything, anytime, it can happen, right? And so you got to go back and look at history, because it's oftentimes it repeats itself.
Now I'm curious. I would say who? Richard Todd. I'm sorry,
No,
Kenny O'Brien,
Kyle Mackey,
Brian
Tony
Brownie
East,
Nagel.
Tony Eason, and no, not Brownie Nagel. It was not Brownie Nagel. Might have been Pat Ryan.
Pat Ryan.
It was Pat Ryan, Ken O'Brien, Kyle Mackey, and who did I say the fourth was? Tony Eason.
Tony Eason. Wow.
Tony Eason. Yeah.
I mean, that's
in 1 year.
Shuffle in, mix of journeyman, and Kenny O'Brien was a decent quarterback.
He was cool.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, eventually you have to, when that happens, you have to make the change. And I thought last year Staley was on borrowed time after they blew that game to Jacksonville in the playoff. I think that's more of a bitter pill to swallow. Very, just not competitive against the Raiders. And then conversely, too, the Raiders get shut out by Minnesota 3-0. Then they put up 63. Now, I'm wondering, if you look at the Raiders as presently constructed with Antonio Pierce, has he done enough to take off that interim tag?
I hate to say no, because, the body of work is so minimal, right? It's really going to come down to what Mark Davis, how they finish. It could even come down to that last game, right? Where do they go out and they just dominate somebody, or do they lose, right? And I really ultimately think that's what it's going to come down to, is who they play in that last game, and ultimately, do they win or lose that game?
Yeah.
I think
I want to get
Mark's
to,
looking for some momentum for sure right
yeah,
now.
well, yeah, you need it, no doubt. And
Yeah,
it's,
yeah,
we always say, right, it's how you finish the season. Um,
absolutely,
uh,
absolutely.
I want to spend a moment with your former team, Kansas City, because I'm looking at this team and I'm saying for all the talent, but it's I can't recall a time where I've seen frustration that's been very visible from Patrick Mahomes. And now a lot of talking heads are basically saying, and players are saying, hey, man, you take that magic out of him, he's just an average quarterback. I'm not buying into any of that. I think he's a great quarterback. But
I
you've
agree.
got the drops from Tony, the drops from Kelsey, the Pacheco issue, Andy Reid, who I think is a Hall of Fame coach. Now all of a sudden, people are looking at Andy Reid again, reverting back to time clock management, the play calling. I asked you this, I think, a week or two ago. I said, are they going to turn it around? Where are you at right now with Kansas City? Because presently constructed, they're not that top seed anymore in the
No,
AFC.
no, they play the Raiders this week, and then they come back and go to the Bengals, and then they're at the Chargers. So I see them finishing strong, right? I know they've had their ups and downs, but this is still Andy Reid, and as you mentioned, he's still a Hall of Fame coach. I expect them to finish up the year and the regular season, should I say, and go into the playoffs and be a team, but probably a number 2 seed, right? We obviously think Baltimore would be that number
Yeah.
1, but I absolutely think that they'd have at least one home game, right, and then go on the road possibly to Baltimore.
It's a remarkable stat. Patrick Mahomes has never had to go on the road before in the
Oh, is that
playoffs.
right? Okay, okay.
I
I didn't
mean,
know that.
think of,
Yeah,
yeah. When I heard that,
that's pretty talented right
yeah,
there.
yeah, I had to quickly go to Pro Football Reference and start
Mm-hmm.
looking up stuff. Another coach we thought was maybe on the hot seat, and it's that late push in the NFL right now is Sean McDermott in Buffalo. They got a really big win against the Dallas Cowboys, who were also coming off a big win. But now you look at Buffalo, they're sitting at 8-6. They've got the Chargers tomorrow. Chargers, we already talked about them 5-9, but how about the turnaround over the last several weeks? You always mention, you talk about the coaching per se. What have you seen with Buffalo?
I mean, what we've seen is we've seen a bunch of coaches get fired here in the last couple of weeks, right? And we've seen Sean McDermott actually really become a very, very talented coach, as we all know he was, but it was reaffirmed with that victory over the Cowboys. Now, like you said, they got to go to the Chargers, which they should win, and then they have the Patriots, and then they go to the Dolphins. Sean McDermott is an absolutely outstanding coach. He's right on the brink of getting to a Super Bowl. And given that he gets a chance to win a Super Bowl finally, he might be in a conversation for a Hall of Fame coach one day, because the job that he's doing right now with this team, we know that Leslie Frazier retired going into the season. And then, of course, we've seen him have to remove, let Ken Dorsey go.
Yep.
But to have Brady come in there and do the job that he's doing now, and after having been let go down in Carolina, so now you've got this young, offensive-minded young man who's now calling the offense, and they're not trying to do anything special. They're taking what the defense gives them, and they're dominating in that particular area. They're not trying to out-scheme anyone. They're saying, hey, if this works, let's keep doing it. And I expect them to continue to run the football like they did this past week against Dallas going into this next game against the Chargers.
Football Friday edition of On Cue. Rich Quinones here. James Hasty kind enough to join us. I kind of skipped over, but that first game, Cincinnati and Pittsburgh was a team. I think they were 7-4. They've dropped 3 straight. They had 2 bad losses to New England, to Arizona. They've got issues with the quarterback and injuries. People are looking at the wide receiver saying they're not blocking, they're not running routes. I've gone back and I've looked at the wide receivers that the Steelers have had over the years. And I always feel as though they might be very talented, but for some reason, the behavior, like the pattern, right? When you go down the line from the Antonio Browns and, Schuster, not so much, but, now you're looking at Pickens and the kid doesn't want to run routes and he's not blocking. And I listen to sports talk radio all the time. I wanted to get a feel for what's going on in Pittsburgh. And it's almost as though they're ready to just jettison Mike Tomlin out of there. And I'm thinking to myself, if Mike Tomlin got fired, Monday or Sunday, 31 other teams would be calling him up, seeing if he was interested in coaching them. Uh, is this a situation where they overachieved and now the injuries and the inconsistent play are starting to come back down to earth? Or do you look at this and say a future Hall of Fame head coach in Mike Tomlin, after 17 years, maybe he's going to need a change of scenery?
I think there maybe a change is good, right? Mike's a defensive guy. They've had some problems there offensively since Ben was there into his career. So then the offensive line, we know, had some issues, and they still continue to struggle. They go out and they draft Pickett, and he comes in, and with that offensive line, of course, still can't get the protection that they need. So, it's been one of those areas for me where you've known about the offensive line problems. You try to fix the quarterback situation, but the aspect of the elements of that offense are all centered around that offensive line.
Yeah.
And you have not addressed that. These last, I want to say 3, 4, 5 years, the Steelers have not addressed that offensive line play. And receivers, we all know. I don't want to isolate just on the Steelers receivers. There's receivers all around the league, and guys that are on TV today were some of the worst blockers of all. So it's funny to even listen to some of these guys talk about their commitment, George Pickens' commitment to blocking. But I get it, right? That's your job. Your job is to go in there and block that player. You have to do your job. And if you don't do it, then they need to replace him and bring someone else in. And that's the problem that I have with Mike Tomlin. Like, he's letting things go. And we all know, who are parents, have kids, when you let things go, they're going to do it worse the next time, right? And so you can't – I think Mike has been I think he's drank the Kool-Aid when it comes to George Pickett and his talent and his skill level, and he's ignored the disciplinary aspect of it. And now it's come to the forefront, and he should have addressed it a while ago.
It's a great point you bring up, and you're right. You're not trying to, an isolated play or player, but the film doesn't lie, right? When these guys are very lackadaisical or on a pick, they're not getting back trying to make a tackle, or they're not going after a fumble, and they're standing there right on film, and you see it. That's Pop Warner, where you pull the kid out of the game and sit his ass because he's not hustling.
Absolutely.
So we go from Tomlin, who has had a wonderful career as a head coach. And by the way, too, they fired their offensive coordinator. And then the next week, I think, put up 400 yards, but the offense hasn't. They also might have a quarterback problem, too. I do have to get your thoughts on what's going on in Philadelphia, because the Philadelphia Eagles were a 10-1 team. They've lost 3 straight. They got pretty much dog walked in 2 out of those 3 losses. And then you look what transpired on Monday night against Seattle. And hey, man, Drew Lock, good for that kid, having an opportunity, making the most of it. But the adjustments weren't there. Second half, Seattle ran the football. Late in the game, they constantly picked on Bradbury. I think he gave up 150 yards on 8 receptions.
Yeah, they targeted him for sure.
They did. A.J. Brown's barking, Jalen Hurts, ill-advised, poor decision-making. So with CPAS, I'm curious, how did a guy like Sirianni score?
Well, okay, so I won't get into giving too many details in that area, but I will say that
without putting you on the spot,
Nick is a very young coach.
Yeah.
A very inexperienced coach. And I think the decision to move Desai up into the box and bring Matt Patricia to the sideline should have been done in the summertime, right? And the idea that they were simply trying to see if Sean Desai was Vic Fangio, which we all know Vic Fangio was a consultant there. And when Jonathan Gannon was struggling in his first year as D coordinator and everybody was up in arms, Vic Fangio came in there and settled things down, right? And so we got to give credit where credit's due. And so Sean Desai, having coached with Vic Fangio, naturally Sirianni, again, inexperienced, thought, oh, I'll get this guy because he's a spinoff. But no, that's not Vic Fangio right there. And so you got to go back and really look at the connections and how Sean Desai even showed up in Philadelphia, because that would have told you that based on that the information of where he's been and what he's done, he wasn't ready to be a defensive coordinator. What happened is Sirianni, inexperienced, panicked, right? Because he didn't have anybody, right? And there was a defensive back coach there that wanted the job, and they wouldn't give it to him. So he left to go to the Ravens. So now you're ultimately left with no one. And so you're thinking, maybe who knows? Maybe he even called Fangio and asked him, "Hey, what about this guy Sean Desai?" And he said, "Sure, go ahead." But that guy was not the right man for the job. And so now you've got Matt Patricia,
Yeah.
a very well recognized and well respected defensive coordinator who I think, given up more time, could be a very good defensive coordinator for them.
Who just so happens doesn't see eye to eye with Darius Slay. And the irony is Darius Slay has that surgery right when Patricia, for lack of a better term, is promoted. You've got Slay going back and forth with a former all-time great and Seth Joyner. You got A.J. Brown making comments. I think the bloom is off the rose with Nick Sirianni. I said it last year, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I kind of use the term glorified cheerleader because you know this. A pass rush can mask a bad secondary and vice versa, right? And vice versa.
A four-man front too? Yes.
And good coaching staff behind me can mask my deficiencies as a head coach. And I kind of think that's what we're seeing. And I'm wondering, is it too late for this team right now to kind of turn it around? And then I believe he somewhat lost his team. It's just me. I'm speculating. When A.J. Brown was aggravated against Kansas City, wasn't getting his target, his reps, his balls, Jalen Hurts and him had the little conversation, right, exchanging pleasantries, and Sirianni walked over, but in the post-game presser, acted as if he didn't know what was going on. If I'm a veteran, I'm watching my head coach's interaction, right? I need to pull A.J. Brown to the side or talk to him afterwards and say, look, sometimes you're not going to get your numbers. It's just not going to be there. And now I think you have a young quarterback who's force-feeding the football to a wide receiver where you have other guys that can make some plays. And that's a recipe for disaster. Is that an overstatement or am I in the ballpark?
The overstatement being that they're force feeding?
Yes.
To AJ Brown?
Yes.
I don't see it so much as that. I know what a challenge AJ Brown presents as a matchup. Like he's a tough challenge, man, for a normal defensive back size-wise in the NFL is going to have a problem with AJ Brown just because of his physicality, right? And so if I'm trying to get the ball to someone, I love Devontae Smith from a deep ball perspective, but if I'm trying to get the ball to someone, I'm trying to get it to AJ Brown without question. I'm gonna use my DeAndre Swift as a changeup out of the backfield.
Yeah.
But my focal point of my offense is going through AJ Brown, no question.
Doesn't it manifest itself, though? The narrative gets stronger and stronger when you're seeing the quarterback make poor decisions because he's trying to go to the wide receiver.
We saw the crossing route with Devontae Smith on the interception that Jalen Hurts threw at the end of the game down there. And we saw that Devontae was open. Yes, but what you often find he's going to find himself doing is that play has worked for them time and time again most of the time, right? Because that's AJ Brown. Yeah. And so, yes, you got to give the defense credit. They made a play, but if I'm gonna take a shot, I'm gonna take it with AJ Brown, and I'm gonna take it all day, every day. That he's gonna go up and win that contested catch as well.
What do you tell, a fellow DB or a fellow corner like in James Bradbury, who's just he looked like he got old fast, man. I mean, he's had a rough go of it, and he got lit up.
Bradbury had some challenges when he's with the Giants, right?
He did, but the thing is, everyone was like, I can't believe you didn't, they didn't and I'm like, I'm starting to kind of see a guy that gets beat on certain patterns, the quickness, catch-up speed's not there, dropping some easy picks, but they picked on him.
Denard Wilson was the defensive back coach, and he's a pretty doggone good one. And he's the one that wanted to be the coordinator with the Eagles that ended up leaving to go to the Ravens. I just don't think people should underestimate the value of good coaching, right? Like losing Denard Wilson, who's a really good coach, to the Ravens, and you see how their secondary is playing. And you see what's going on in Philadelphia. Yeah, Bradbury's he made some bad decisions in some clutch situations, but good coaching would have told him to do some things different technique wise, understanding the circumstances in the game, knowing that, hey, I'll give him the out ball.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna squat on the out ball. I'm gonna take away the deep ball no matter what, because I know how much time did they have. It was it less than a minute? Yeah, it was like less than 30 seconds, right?
They went down the field pretty. I mean, well, remember
Yeah,
too, even conversely, because the Eagles got the ball back with 28 seconds and Hurts
yes.
picked up 15 something odd
Well, it might
yards.
have been 15, 16 seconds on the clock.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm squatting on an out ball.
Yeah.
Why are you squatting on an out ball? They were at like the 30, right?
Yep.
Out in that area. They got to score. And someone should have said, hey, don't jump anything, keep everything in front of you, and go up, knock it down. Don't even worry about trying to intercept it. Just knock it down.
Yeah.
Right? And give us a chance to get out of here. But those elements, those aspects of coaching were not echoed to him. They weren't sent to him. And if unfortunately you saw a guy that is a fairly decent corner in this league, he got to the Super Bowl last year. Give up a play like that, that just breaks your heart, man, because nobody wants to be in that situation as a defensive back.
No, and he was a stand-up guy. He took the bullet, and again, last year he was in, again, you look at the play and you can't get rid of it if you're an Eagles fan. Was it pass interference or not? But he stood up there and took the bullet. It was a great throw and an even better catch late. But
that's the other thing about this whole change at coordinator, right? Is as someone that's been a coach before, you got your own verbiage, right? You got your own knowledge and understanding of a game, right, Rich? And I can't give you my notes, right? Because you're going to look at my notes and go, well, what is this chicken scratch, right? What is this? And I'm like, oh, this is what it says. And you're going to be like, oh, okay. So now I'm going to give you that chicken scratch, and I'm going to say, go call a play.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, that's essentially what they did by telling Matt Patricia to go call the plays.
I can't argue that.
You can't take Sean Desai's notes and go call the game, dude. You don't even know what you're looking at.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how absurd the idea was to do it. Like right now, it's crazy.
Yeah. It gets magnified because, again, moments later, what happens? You have plenty of time on the clock. You got a field goal kicker that can kick it 59 yards, 60 plus yards. Yeah. He did it in a driving rainstorm against Buffalo. Mm-hmm. And instead of making the smart play, living to fight another down, you throw a bad ball. Last game before I let you get out of here, Baltimore and San Francisco. And I believe this game will I think this game decides the NFL MVP, to be honest, because
no question. It definitely decides that. No question.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we would agree right now, Purdy, Jackson, and McCaffrey, right?
I'll go so far as to say McCaffrey, because I'm a huge fan of Trent Williams, the tackle, right? And I could see a considerable difference in that offense when Trent went down and I saw the change of play for Purdy, but I didn't see a lot of change in play for McCaffrey. And so for me, just that comparison of how Trent Williams impacted Purdy in that time when he was down, that doggone CMC now, he's pretty good, man. And his change, his level of play is pretty consistent. You know, it's not, you're not going to see him go and just all of a sudden have a bad week. The guy is a phenomenal player. We know it's a quarterback award, but the amount of hits that Christian has taken, as always, at running back, and still be able to perform. We know what happened last year with the trade. You would think for all those reasons, you would not see the type of performance that you're seeing right now. But you have to acknowledge greatness despite the position. Let's not get caught up on a quarterback. Let's just look at the impact of a player. And like I said, when Trent Williams went down, we didn't see that same Brock Purdy. Now we're seeing CMC hasn't changed a bit.
It's really fascinating too, because if you looked at him just as a wide receiver catching ball out of backfield, he'd probably be a top 10 wide receiver. And we're talking about the running back position. And
very good route runner. Yeah,
I'm wondering if the votes, I'm pulling some votes. I mean, I think the last time we had co-MVP was Barry Sanders and Brett Favre, 96, 97.
Okay.
And the running back position, this, 18 running backs, I'm pretty sure it's 18, have won the MVP. Jim Brown won it 3 times. You know, if you go back and you look at AP's season in 2012,
Okay.
he's not doing what Christian McCaffrey was doing coming out of the backfield as far as, catching the ball, wheel routes, slants, screen passes. I think he's a brilliant back, but I also think it is a quarterback award,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? And Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, healthy, putting up the gaudy numbers. I don't know, man. I can see either or. I mean, I think they're both phenomenal players, but if I said, hey, I got to go 80 yards, what quarterback do I want? Brock Purdy might win the award, but I'm not going to stick him back there to go 80 yards. I'm still going to stick Patrick Mahomes to go 80 yards late in the game.
Okay, yeah. Well, now I thought we were going to be comparing Baltimore to San Francisco with the MVP race.
Well,
because if I'm going 80, I'm putting Lamar Jackson back.
Oh, well, 100%. We agree on that.
Okay.
No doubt. No,
no
that's
question,
fair.
right?
That's fair. Yeah.
Okay. So you would agree it's going to come down to who wins this game, and you would say your representative for the 49ers would be Brock Purdy.
Yeah.
For the 49ers. Okay. And mine's is Christian McCaffrey. And you would obviously say, yes, okay, if the Ravens win, then it's without a question.
What if the Ravens win on a Tucker field goal and Lamar Jackson's 10 of 26 for a $113 and a pick?
Then it goes into the next week, right?
Yeah.
But if it's a clear and dominant performance by one of those groups, by either Baltimore or by the 49ers, it's clear. It's over, right? We don't need to go another week after that.
No.
Right? But if it crawls along and it's like watching paint dry, and this thing is a tight 6-3 game, and
who's going to make a play?
Then what we have to go to the next week is what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Right? Because now we didn't see enough offense on either side.
Yeah, I don't think the game's going to shape out like that. I think we're going to get like a 24, 21, 27. San Francisco is just they're such a physical team. I believe they broke the Eagles. I've said it on the air for a couple weeks now. I just think they punched a bully in the mouth. The bully hasn't gone off the mat. And Baltimore, Kansas City, if Buffalo gets in, Jacksonville is still trying to figure things out.
Right.
Miami, fun team to watch, but man, you go up 14-0, they got to abandon the running game, and they got to let that kid Tua sling them back in. I don't think they're built to come from behind like that.
I'm more surprised than anything that they haven't really put more emphasis into the run game.
They have great backs.
Now, All-Chain has been out. He's coming back this weekend. But Mostert's that guy. Like, give him the football. Let him run the football and let him come out of the backfield and do the things that he needs to do. Work with Smythe in the tight end up groups, because ultimately that middle of the field is where you need to dominate.
Yeah.
You need to dominate the middle of the field, and that's where the tight end comes in and running the football plays a part. So I'd like to see Miami give more commitment to the running game because of those two backs that they have, especially since they have All-Chain back this week.
Listen, if they go on the road in bad weather, they're going to have to run the football.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're going on the road. Absolutely.
Yeah. It's going to be very interesting to see how the next couple of weeks shake out. And I still believe there's going to be, and I hate saying it, 10 to 12. 12 is a high number, but maybe 10.
12 is a high number now, Rich. That's a high number.
You're not the only person that said that to me. They're like, where are you getting that number? I was like,
I hear
of
the teams, man. What are we talking about? Close to a third almost?
I mean, Washington, the Jets, Carolina, the Raiders.
Wait a minute. The Jets?
Yeah.
The Jets.
Just enough already with Aaron Rodgers and Hackett and Douglas and Robert Salah. Just
so you're saying he gave back $33.5 million, and they're going to say, big deal, we're making a change.
Yeah, because I think right at this point, he's dictated everything for that organization, and the head coach refused to bench Zach Wilson earlier, kowtowing to the kid. Joe Douglas probably put pressure on him because that was Joe Douglas's draft pick. Woody Johnson is wherever the hell Woody Johnson is. And it's just, it's been a bad season for them. And I think when you have a season like this and you put all your eggs in one Aaron Rodgers basket and the head coach every week looks more lost than the week prior, I think it's time for a change. That's just.
So you believe that the ownership group has no knowledge about, was not involved in any of this decision making at
No,
all?
I believe they have, but Woody Johnson is more or less bring them over. We know the background, we know the resume, write the check. I think more of the blame goes on Joe Douglas and the fact when Aaron Rodgers goes down, why don't you turn around and call Joe Flacco? Look what he's doing in Cleveland. I believe they didn't want to bring in a quarterback that would push Aaron Rodgers. That's just my thought.
I go back to that $33.5 million. You know, that was basically blood money right there, because you basically are saying, okay, whatever you want, you know, with that type of financial commitment, whatever you want, buddy, it's whatever you want.
Right. And how's
Right?
it worked out?
Yeah. When's the last time you heard $33.5 million being given back by a player? That's how you know there's some real power moves going on here. And I think, like to your point, I just find it hard to believe that they would do it after that, right?
I think
Like
he runs. I think he runs the team. I do, and maybe he wants someone like Robert Saleh, who's not going to give him any type of pushback, and is going to be that yes guy. Your team, Aaron. Go ahead.
The problem that I have with it is, as someone that's been on a 4-12 team,
Yeah,
is just the disregard for the time and the pain and the soreness and just the sadness that these guys are enduring, right? Like you can't even walk into the daycare to get your child because you feel so bad,
yeah,
and you're embarrassed. And I just find it hard to believe that such disregard is being given to those players, because it's not a game. It's their livelihood.
right.
It's more than a game to them. It's
Yeah,
their livelihood. And there's a sense of pride that they have about themselves. And when they go home to see their family members and all that, it's like you can't even smile and enjoy the holidays
yeah,
because of how this whole thing is played out. And ultimately, you considered yourself a professional. You went out there and busted your rear end, and here you have a certain group, a small group of people that are basically saying they don't care.
right.
Like, that's such a disrespect and disregard for those players, man, that are out there every Sunday. And
Yeah,
and those guys I feel for, because I've been there. I've never had an experience where people knowingly ignored the outcome of these games like they're doing right now. And it's just not right. It's not fair to those guys.
and think about it. It went downhill 4 offensive snaps
Yeah.
into their season, right? And that
And
just
there was no contingency. Like,
bingo,
things happen. 4 plays in, okay, great. Who's the next guy?
bingo
Why didn't you have the next guy here? You
falls
know?
on the head coach and the GM. Falls on the GM too to not have
Yeah. Aaron
that
Rodgers
plan.
didn't tell you not to go bring in some new players.
Right,
He didn't
right,
say that.
right, right. Yeah,
So,
I'm gonna say I don't want to see it, but I think there might be 10 vacancies, we'll say, but we've got a couple weeks to kind of. I know, and that's a bad
that'll
look
be
for the
probably the
NFL.
largest turnover
Yep,
in the NFL. Man,
and that's
I can't even recall another time like this.
yeah, and it's a bad look for the NFL because then it shows that some of these franchises have zero consistency and stability, and that's
Well,
unfortunate.
it all boils down to, at some point the owners are going to start to put more emphasis into learning about evaluating coaches.
Right.
You can't just take one name and say, okay, we're going to evaluate this one guy and then go, okay, we got nothing else here. We're out of here. Good luck to
Yeah.
you. No, you need to stay and look at these other people. You
Yep.
need to be engaged and involved with understanding what these other people bring to the table. Okay, yeah, your head coach can make the recommendations that who he wants to work with,
Yeah.
but you need to have input. Why? Because if you decide to move on, you know who the next guy up is going to be. But most importantly, you're now learning about the game and what it takes and what these guys are all about and how to evaluate them. So now you don't start to have the same amount of turnover as the other organizations, because you're learning how to evaluate not just the head coach, but the coordinators on down.
Yeah.
Right. And so at some point, the owners are going to have to sit down and decide that they really need to put more emphasis into learning about their staff,
Yeah,
their
and
coaching
that's
staff.
where CPAS comes in, and of
Yeah,
course,
it's not even it's not even something where we're 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 saying that these folks aren't successful because they're billionaires. We get it, but this is a different deal over here. Coaching in the National Football League is high. Playing in the National Football League is high pressure, and you need to have people that know what to do in high pressure situations. And typically, they're the ones that win.
yeah,
You know what I mean? So
yeah,
you got to look for those people that can perform in those high pressure situations and win. And then you got you something. And
yeah,
you just duplicate that.
yeah,
Same at each and every position. That's it.
yeah. You and I make it sound very easy. They just need to get on board, right? And I believe,
Fast.
yeah,
10 teams, fast. We need to start learning. Some speed
James
reading or something.
Hasty, the All Pro, Pro Bowl, Pro Bowler as well from Kansas City and the New York Jets, kind enough to join me on a Football Friday edition of On Cue. We got to do it again next week because then we can
All
kind of
right.
go back and look at our MVP discussion
We got to
playoffs.
follow up. Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it's always a follow up. James, I always appreciate. Hey, have a wonderful holiday. Be well,
Okay.
enjoy it, and we'll do it again next week. Always appreciate a couple
All
moments.
right, Rich. We'll see you, man.